And welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be reacting to a video by How Money Works. And the title of the video is How Much Worse Can Home Price Really Get? And I'll be giving my own perspective on this thing after watching parts of the video, which I actually love his point, but on a different perspective on why these houses are very expensive than the so-called price. So let's actually watch and I'll give my perspective.
How much worse can home prices possibly get? The median age of a first-time homebuyer is now approaching 40, not even accounting for the people who will never buy a house. 1% down mortgages are becoming increasingly common, and so too are 40-year terms. The median family now needs to spend almost 40% of their income to cover the median loan repayment, and that's before counting income taxes and other expenses like insurance,
And the age for owning a house
property tax,
probably
and
right now
maintenance.
is kind of insane. Most people actually never own a house till they actually die. But I get his point. But honestly, this is actually the first world country. Imagine it being in a third world country. You don't actually have hope of owning your house because there are no mortgage system. There are not even better jobs for you actually to. He's even talking from a perspective of, I'm not saying your struggles are not does not matter or not, but this video is actually talking about a first world country. Imagine you being in a third world country, in a country like Nigeria, where you do not actually have hope of owning your own house. The prices of this in Nigeria, actually they do not actually sell houses like this. I feel like the only majority of the rich people actually buy these houses already built. But in a third world country, majority of the times actually people actually build their own house from scratch into their own desire. You actually fix your house, roof the house, get laborers, pay, and the government work is just to take nothing else again. When if he's talking about 40, and I can assure you, in Nigeria here, you do not even have hope of owning your house. You don't even have hope of you seeing someone own a house. The only houses you find in Nigeria which are being owned by parents, majority of them are old house. Not in rural. I'm not talking about urban area. I'm talking about rural areas. Are being old houses, which probability of the time the family just built a family house too. That's where the only place you can actually see majority of the houses in Nigeria are owned by the family itself, not individual. I'm not saying they are not people are. He's talking about what in Nigeria you actually have at least if you work according to the Nigerian plan, by default you cannot own a house. You cannot. The highest salary in Nigeria about 750k after tax, feeding, clothing, children, school fees, and all that. You might never own a house. This he's talking about the third world country. And I might even tell you why it gets worse along this video, but let's just ride along and I will tell you why is it like this majority of the time according to the research I've made earlier last year about the crisis of economics of housing. And I actually read about this documentary from research made by 2005 to 2008, something of that nature. But I will just tell you about what I read and it will actually get worse, way worse than this, way more
In
worse.
certain cities, this number is over 90%, which effectively just means that the average family cannot afford the average home. For most people, the only feasible way to buy a house is to have just sold a house, with first-time buyers now representing the smallest share of the market since economists started collecting this data over 4 decades ago. The numbers are not great, but at least they seem to suggest that affordability can't get any worse, right? Well, I hate to break it to you, but there are a lot of emerging factors that could make home prices much, much worse.
More than 3 years since graduating from college, 25-year-old
And one of the reasons why home price marginally gets worse are big corporatives. They are the one actually investing in the major housing sector. They are actually the ones investing. There are no big companies you see in this world present that does not own a housing agent or they does not invest in housing already. They actually owe big they are people which they invest all these things in their care are being tamed to return like 10%, 15%, 20, 30% interest in the span of a year. And majority of the time they keep falling down that rabbit hole of overinflating the prices of the house so that if they could actually sell two to three of the houses, they could actually return to them back. That's the thing. The big cooperatives are the one buying majority of the stocks or majority of the shares of this housing agent company or these housing companies. That's the major thing that is keeping these houses at. And most landlords actually are the one actually causing this thing because if you stay in a normal place like which the road is good and there's just the road even self without even normal light, just the road, I bet you pay close to at least 1 million in Nigeria. There's no other. He's actually talking from a perspective of a first world country. I'm not even talking about owning a house. I'm talking about you being a tenant. You can actually rent a house in a very clean environment, peaceful environment in the third world country without you spending millions. It's actually insane when you think of it. He's actually complaining about owning the house, and I'm talking about just renting the house. Do you know how many months you actually work to save up 1 million to pay for a normal a one bedroom flat in Nigeria actually to actually stay, not even own the house. You're not paying to stay. You're not paying to own it. You're actually paying just to stay. At least in a good environment, 1 million might be the bare minimum you can pay. Then convert 1 million. How many people actually earn 1 million in 3 months in Nigeria? And by calculation, your house rent is supposed to be like at least 2 to 3 months salary maximum. But an average Nigerian worker actually takes home 150 to 160,000, excluding the minor business and contribution and side hustle. And that's why whenever I see people complaining about house owning, I just I just feel like even staying at the house renting now are very very much of a problem than actually owning the house. You might actually get revoked, like big increase in your house rent. You might just wake up in the morning and your landlord will tell you, "Ah, this house is going for 900,000 and you were just at 400,000." So owning the house sef I think is a better, but even renting the house, he's just like talking about owning the house. What about renting the house? There are much more problems than actually owning this house right now than renting the
Zoe
house.
Zarenda is back in her childhood bedroom in Connecticut.
40% of those in multi-generational homes cite financials as the reason for cohabitating.
But the bank of mom and dad is playing a bigger role in buying houses.
Is becoming difficult as major insurance companies pull some of their coverage options.
It means I have to work extremely hard to be able to afford a nice house one day.
Extremely hard is kind of not. You can possibly work too hard and actually break down while working, but I bet you could not actually afford a good home or a good house in a very good environment. And majority of the reason why all these houses are very expensive than we imagine. Agents, the agents are the one overinflating these prices than you imagine. Majority of these houses which are expensive, the landlord might not know. This house, the landlord might put this house for about 150,000, and the agent might come and tell you is 900,000. You might never see that landlord. You might never see him. You might actually just come once. The day the landlord might hear the price you are paying for that house. Majority of the time, the caretakers and caretakers of the house and the agents are being arrested because, on average, the agents are adding at least 300 to 400% increase on the house rent. If you are supposed to rent house for like about 250, the first minimum payment as a tenant in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken, you are going to pay at least 400. Where is the remaining about 250 coming from? The agents and the caretaker are the ones doing that. Aside that, the house rent is going for 150. My first payment is 450. The lawyer might say, okay, the normal payment is 150, and they might actually tell you 350 or 250. Where the remaining 100k going to? I'm talking about rent. I'm not even talking about buying of the house because I just think majority of the times buying of homes in Nigeria just I think they are money laundering scheme because I do not see reason why a house in Nigeria will be sold for dollars. Imagine buying a house for $6 million and house being sold in the first world country like America, UK, they are selling their house for $400,000 standard houses, and I'm buying a house in Nigeria for $2.something million. Is that not like they are overinflated? When you look about it, the agents are the one actually increasing this price of the houses. Now you imagine the landlords are no longer increasing like the agents. The agents are the one, and secondly, the caretakers. Caretakers are the ones doing messed work. They might actually tell you, look at the taking care of this company might be paying a fee of like 10k monthly, or your light bill might be like this. If you are using prepaid meter, that's a different case. But if you are actually doing contribution in your the house which you own, probably you might not ever stay alone in the house. Any house you are paying, staying alone in that company, assuming you might at least pay the minimum of 2 million a month. Minimum. What is 2 million? 2.5 minimum. And with increase every year. And that's very, very set. And actually, I think this from a first world country perspective. As a Nigerian, as someone who stay in a third world country, I think you might actually never own a house till you die. I think it's not cost, but I understand it's better. He's talking about owning the house in the first world country, but in a third world country, you might actually never own a house. If you follow the life normal life pattern, or I think normal routinal pattern as a third world country, you just work, go to school, live an average life and die. You might never own a house. I don't mean owning a land and a small piece of house on top. Owning a proper house which can be well arranged in the next 10 to 4 years for your children. Actually means something like not a very tiny house which you might just manage, and there might be apartmentification on the house, using POP and all those things to take care of the house. I mean actually house which if painted or not painted, you might actually look and say, this house looks big and has a very quality design and durability. It does not mean house that are actually small. You understand? So buying the lands are one thing, and you actually fall into. There are many problems with this house that this guy is actually paying for a house that does not belong to the landlord, to the person who sold it to you, or the agent who sold it to you. Is a very big factor. I think I might have to cut the video here, but there are many problems involved in this housing problem. I think the agents are the number one. Even when it comes to land buying in Nigeria or any parts of the world, the agents are the number one major factor why there's an increase in housing price in this whole world. I don't understand here, like, and I think I thank you. The wealthy people are also major factor. The wealthy people. I don't mean the rich. Rich might just be the first generation of people owning money in that kindred, on that generation, on that family. I mean the wealthy, which has been doing this housing stupid shit for a very long time. Imagine you buying hectares of land and just putting one thing, put one church or one school in that environment, and the housing and the land price are just from like 200k up to like 1 point something million. And you might actually hear houses being sold for in dollars in Nigeria. You wonder if this country is actually working with dollars or naira. So I think I have to cut this video here, but the housing price is something else. And when you go to university areas, that's the worst. They might actually be renting houses for you like you are working like you are working in a bank, or you have one safe container which you store goods and things in your possession. Because how will you be renting a house for a student at the rate of 900,000 naira? Why the student do not even earn anything, like nothing. If you should convert that 900,000 naira, sorry, you're actually renting that house about $500. Who actually earns $500 as a student? Because not everybody has figured out life easily for themselves, but I understand their perspective, and I understand the perspective of everybody going through this phase. Not the agent, because the agent do not already have any hope or any sympathy towards people. But at this point, I'm very unsatisfied with the housing cost, because you might never own one. It's not a cost. It's not but it's not bad speech, and that's almost the truth. Because the more a year tops on top, what is currently now, like we are heading 2026, I think the housing price and the land price might actually triple, even quadruple self. Where I'm saying it, because majority of the times the big companies actually use their tax money to actually buy this land and keep it as a charity organization, or try to build churches or build uh, free healthcare, and they will actually never build that free healthcare, then convert that land now back to their, or put it in their children's name, and in the next 6 to 7 years pump up that land. At least if they actually bought that whole land for a cost of 100 million, they will actually start selling those land, each of them 70 to 80 million. I'm kidding you not. Especially when there is actually federal light and the road is good, just leave it at that spot. They are selling that house at least in the minimum range, in that land, sorry, in the minimum range 70 to 80 million. I'm gonna have to cut this video here for the third. This is the third time I'm saying, but there are many problems when it comes to housing. Many problems. And if you actually have the money to buy this thing, house, I advise you to start buying land. Buy land and leave house alone. Majority of the houses right now are just old houses which has been renewed. But if you actually buy land, you can actually keep that land uh, and actually start saving up. They build a very good house, because you building a house which cannot sustain you when you have a family or a family gathering is actually stupid and insane. Better you just get only land. Over time, start building gradually and build it to your taste, because your children might actually fall back to that spot, because the housing price is going up. And that's it. I think I'll have to end this video here. Bye, I'll see you in the next video.